Hello cruel world, my name is Dr. Sohom. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. So today I'm going to talk about the case of Lori Vallow and 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐝𝐡 Daybell. They are both defendants right now in the States and they've been charged with the murder of two kids. That is 7-year-old JJ and 17-year-old Tylee, who are both children from Lori Vallow's first marriage. So Vallow has very recently been committed to a psychiatric hospital, and this case brings up lots of medico-legal questions. And this is exactly my area of expertise. I give evidence in courts for medico-legal cases. I make the decision to transfer people to psychiatric units where appropriate. So obviously I've not assessed either defendant in person, so I can't give you any specific diagnoses, and I'm looking at this through the lens of the English law perspective. So this is more about medico-legal concepts in case you're interested. And we both know you're interested because you clicked on this video. So I'll be answering questions like, why might somebody like Lori Vallow be committed to a psychiatric hospital, and their belief about doomsday, about the end of the world, whether that can be a psychiatric defense and in what circumstances. So sit back, enjoy, and welcome to Psych for Sore Minds. So this is quite a tragic case, and they really were senseless murders. JJ's body, both bodies were found in Daybell's house. JJ's was taped and wrapped in plastic, and Tylee's was burnt and disfigured. And their mother, Lori Vallow, had lied to the police about the whereabouts of the children. So it's a very convoluted plot, and it's quite a murky kind of scenario. So Daybell was an author of these like apocalyptic novels that were based in Mormon religious beliefs. So quite a niche market, I would say. And they met because they were both members of this like doomsday cult that believed in the end of the world. And oddly, Daybell is also facing charges for the murder of Tammy, his ex-wife. Plus he's facing charges for theft and insurance fraud. But let's face it, you want the gory stuff. Nobody clicks on a video and thinks, ooh, insurance fraud, that sounds sexy. So this is a very sort of warped case. So Lori Vallow became a super fan of Daybell, and she even moved to Idaho to be near him. And her then husband Charles was shot by her brother and killed. Apparently that was self-defense. And then Vallow married Daybell only 2 weeks after the funeral of her husband, which, let's face it, is a little bit distasteful, although arguably she might have got a discount on the catering. I'm not sure. Too soon? So in May of 2021, about a year after the bodies were found, Vallow was committed to a psychiatric hospital, and she was found unfit to stand trial. And my understanding is that she was committed for a maximum of 90 days for restorative treatment. So to me, that sounds like what we'd have in England as a Section 48. That's a remand section. So that's where you send somebody to hospital temporarily, either with the intention of getting them better quickly so that they are fit to stand trial, fit to plead, fit to go through the court process, or if the end of that 90 days, you make a decision that they're so unwell that they have to remain in hospital indefinitely. And if that happens, then it's basically up to the consultant forensic psychiatrist in charge of their care if and when they're safe to be released into the community. In the UK, Section 48 lasts 3 months initially, and then you can extend it 1 month at a time all the way up to a year. And at that point, you have to make a decision. Are they staying in hospital or are they going to stand trial? So we don't know a lot, but we do know that both Vallow and 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐝𝐡 had these apocalyptic beliefs. So they believed that the world was doomed and that it was coming to an end. So the question is, can that be used as a psychiatric defense? Well, if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you will know that there's two particular defenses that could be relevant here. There's diminished responsibility, which is a partial defense, which changes murder to manslaughter, and there's not guilty by reason of insanity, which is a full psychiatric defense. So if the equivalent in England would be that somebody would be found not guilty, technically in the eyes of the law, they're innocent, but it still might mean, and in this case it would be very likely, that they would still need to go to a psychiatric unit, a secure unit for offenders for long-term rehabilitation. So is it possible? The answer is, it's possible, but it's very unlikely. It all depends on the evidence given by an expert witness, which would be a forensic psychiatrist such as myself. So to take the insanity plea as an example, it has to be a disease of the mind, and the psychiatrist has to prove that either the defendant didn't know what they were doing, like actually didn't understand their actions, or they didn't know what they were doing were legally wrong. And I think it'd be really hard to argue that in this particular case. And that's because Vallow had tried to cover it up from the police. So if she didn't know what she was doing was legally wrong, then there'd be no reason to cover it up to the police. So hypothetically speaking, this is not what happened, but in another set of circumstances, for example, if Vallow genuinely believed that the world was ending and she believed that her children would suffer or be tortured within this kind of doomsday scenario, and she wanted to put them out of their misery, then that potentially could be used as a psychiatric defense. And when I'm talking about this, it's reminding me of the case of 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐝 𝐒𝐻, tragic case. She killed her children, 5 children, in 2001 in Houston, and she did eventually get a finding of not guilty by reason of insanity for similar beliefs to what I've just described. So she had beliefs about the devil marking her children, and she felt that she had to kill them. So I would urge you to check out my videos on that case. I think it's really interesting, fascinating, and I discuss how that particular defense worked. That defense actually exists in Houston. So I think a reasonable question would be, and a question that I've seen in some internet comments about news articles about Vallow, would be this: what if she's faking it? Well, it is possible to fake mental illness, although it's very difficult to convince a forensic psychiatrist convincingly. I've done a whole series of videos on faking mental illness, go check them out. And the reason for that is firstly because she'd be observed constantly for a minimum of 90 days, and it's quite hard to keep up a facade for that long. And also because some symptoms follow patterns. So for example, when people hear voices, they tend to be outside your head rather than inside your head, and they tend to say certain things, like they have paranoid ideas, or they commentate on what the person, the sufferer, is actually doing, as opposed to, for example, having strong opinions and arguments. As another example, being in a manic phase is associated with like speeded up speech and a flight of ideas, which potentially could be faked, but it's also associated with decreased sleep, and that is hard, not impossible, but hard to fake over a long period of time. And as I said before, at least in the UK, on a section 48, it lasts 3 months, so similar amount of time, but it can be extended a month at a time up to a year. So if there's any doubts, if the forensic psychiatrist thinks that the patient might be faking it, they can carry on extending it to be certain in the long term. Now, I mentioned some of the internet comments. There is, unsurprisingly, a slew of vitriol towards Lori Vallow. A lot of people are saying some very nasty things about her, and I can kind of understand that perspective. I mean, it does look like she intentionally might have murdered her 2 children. Personally, I try not to get too judgmental. I'm not a judge, I'm not an executioner, I'm a doctor. So if, and this is a huge if, and I'm not saying this is the case, I'm just saying if her actions were driven by mental illness, and if she wasn't criminally responsible, then just like 𝐏𝐬𝐲𝐝, I think she deserves a chance at rehabilitation. If you feel differently, please let me know why in the comments. See if you can convince me otherwise. I'm open to other people's ideas and suggestions. So to conclude, this is a very interesting case. It's right into my area of interest and of expertise. Lots of complex medico-legal issues, and I think we have to see how it pans out. So it's still very early on in the process. We need to see what the doctors and the psychiatrists think of her mental state at her time when she's committed into hospital. But hopefully this video has helped you at least understand some of the broader medico-legal concepts. If you're interested in this kind of thing, you should definitely check out my channel, A Psych for Sore Minds. I do a whole range of videos on lots of different topics, from high-profile true crime cases like this one, to individual diagnoses, some to do with offending and violence, because that's my area of expertise, and some to do with more common mental illnesses that typical people might suffer. So until next time, stay euthymic, and remember, I love you.